What is up, guys? Wrestling Premiere is here. Okay, I said it last video. I'm going to do something that's different, that's not main event, so here it is. Gregory Helms. Now, other than that generic graphic of the sunglasses, I can't say anything bad about him. He took a forgotten, by the company, Cruiserweight division and made it look as prominent as he could in a way. Like, during his run, it wasn't like the Cruiserweight division was at its peak or anything like that, but he treated the title like a big deal. That's what I'm trying to say. He was definitely the unsung hero of that era of SmackDown, and it's just a shame he wasn't pushed to a higher level, although I personally think he would have had he never got injured in 2007. Anyways, in this video, I cover the Hurricane's transition into Gregory Helms, and how he became one of SmackDown's most prominent stars. Now, as you may know, Helms was somewhat a successful star as a Hurricane. Along with Rosie, they finally captured the titles at Backlash 2005, and it was years of hard work finally paying off for the duo. But it was only a while later that WWE wanted to split up the duo. Now, here's the story of how they split. During their title match against Last Kid and Trevor Murdoch at Unforgiven 2005, Hurricane suffered an arm injury. Despite this, he wanted to compete, and this ended up costing them, as a couple of seconds later, the duo went for the high and low to capture the titles. Then things took a turn when Hurricane was assaulted by Kurt Angle a month later. He had interrupted the boss, and he called him out on the JR incident. JR got fired a week earlier, and as a result of this, he sent Angle to do the dirty work. Coach was annoying us with his horrendous commentary, and Hurricane actually found an opening, but Angle was there to lock him in the ankle lock. Hurricane was tapping, and many officials had to restrain the Olympic hero. A couple of minutes later, Hurricane basically ended things with Rosie, and this wasn't even mentioned on the show. I had to go to the next week's episode in order to find out what exactly happened. It happened during the commercial break, and Rosie checked up on the Hurricane. Hurricane didn't want him to come near him at all. He shoved him, and he even slapped him before taking off his mask, signaling the end of the superhero bunch. The following week, Rosie was set to team up with the Hurricane, but that never happened. Instead, Rosie came out alone, and during the handicap match, Hurricane, or now as he wanted to be called, Gregory Helms, watched on from a distance for a match that he was supposed to be involved with. Unfortunately, though, this is where they got that horrendous Titantron. You know, the sunglasses one. They couldn't have done some studio shots in the back. And yes, Rosie lost. This thing would escalate on the November 7th, 2005 episode of Raw when Gregory Helms demanded a match with, these are his words, that fat piece of garbage. His request was granted, and he ended up beating Rosie with the Shining Wizard. He seemed like a total 180 from who he was previously, as the Hurricane was this happy go-around superhero guy, while Gregory Helms was just a guy with a mean streak. As for Rosie, he ended up getting released a while later. As for Gregory Helms, he was relegated to Sunday Night Heat for a bit before starting a feud with Jerry Lawler. On commentary, the King was making jokes on Helms, and Helms, believed there was a conspiracy against him. He said that he's been held down because someone's out there with an open mic making jokes about him. The King himself believed it was Helms' career choices that got him into these situations, not his statement. Helms then came out to say something to the King's face, and he asked him to make jokes about the Hurricane once again. Helms then stated that if there's anybody that's to be made fun of, it's the King. He responded saying that when Helms was Hurricane, he was somewhat entertaining, but now he's just a guy who sucks. Helms responded with a slap, and it came to blows. Helms ran away, and Jerry Lawler challenged him to a matchup at New Year's Revolution. As for how that match went, freaking Helms lost. Why is it funny? Because this young, pompous man believed he can beat an old, rusty wrestler. But he didn't. That's why it's funny, because Helms needed this win way more than Jerry Lawler, but honestly, looking back, it probably wouldn't have gone better for him had he won, because he would have remained on Raw. Things were bright from here on, and in my opinion, this was the beginning of Helms' best run in WWE. At the Royal Rumble, Kid Cash was set to defend the Cruiserweight Championship in a Cruiserweight Classic. Reminder that this was a SmackDown branded match, but Gregory Helms, took advantage of the former champion rule to enter the matchup. Now, these matches honestly don't get much appreciation. There's no dull moments in the matches. Everyone's bouncing around. My favorite spot in this match was a swinging neck breaker off the top rope. I loved when Helms used to hit that move, and it got the crowd popping this time around. Anyways, Helms ended up winning the title, and honestly, this was the best place for him. With the way the company was booking him, he wasn't going to shine elsewhere. Like on Raw, nobody popped for anything he did, but in these long Cruiserweight Championship matches, he could shine. That's what happened here. He hits moves that wow the fans. They're into the matches, and yeah, there's no better place that he belonged other than SmackDown. Now with Helms as the Cruiserweight Champion, in his first interview, he emphatically stated that he is the division, and he proclaimed himself the greatest Cruiserweight alive today. All of a sudden, Nunzio approached him and managed to convince the champ to defend the title next week. Now, why did he accept? Well, Helms believed he wasn't going to break a sweat on SmackDown, so this was basically going to be cruise control in his mind. The title match went on as planned. Kid Cash watched on from a distance, scouting his future opponent. And as for Nunzio, he did bring some fight. Not much though, as Helms was on point. He was arrogant, and he retained the title. There was no rest for Helms though, as he defended the title the following week. But before his match, however, he made an enemy out of himself. He believed he attained a status much higher than his fellow cruiserweights, and a little context, he did prove he belonged on SmackDown. Problem with this was the fact that he ran his mouth a little too much, and he got himself into these sticky situations, seeing as he bragged about doing whatever he wanted to the cruiserweights, and the entire division ran out there and jumped him. Funaki hit a bulldog, London hit a drop saw, Kendrick hit sliced bread, Mexicals and Nunzio hit their moves, and then Scotty 2 Hotty hit the worm. The crowd was fully engaged into the move, which was cool to see, and Helms had something to worry about. Now, the match at No Way Out, once again, spectacular. Obviously, Helms found himself in a tough situation, but he managed to steal the victory from out of nowhere. And like I said earlier, I suggest you guys watch these Cruiserweight matches if you haven't and if you're interested. The matches were fast-paced, no dull moments like I said earlier, and you blink, you miss basically. Following No Way Out, the SmackDown Cruiserweights continued to hate on Helms. He successfully defended the title against Psychosis. He once again cheated to win the match, and his mindset was just escape. It didn't matter how he got the win as long as he got it. Unfortunately though for Helms, he broke his nose during a SmackDown tour in Australia, and Helms took a break to heal that injured nose. Upon his return, he was somewhat a bigger deal. It seemed like Helms was becoming a notable part of SmackDown. He began appearing much more frequently, he had matches with some of the big guns, and he finally began a feud with a notable star, like a guy that actually stood out from the others, Matt Hardy. This feud didn't begin for a reason, but over time they actually did have personal issues. Their first match at the Great American Bash was good, and on a night filled with elevated liver enzymes, these two did a good job in getting the crowd into it. Also, that ending was really befitting of Gregory Helms. He sent Hardy into the turnbuckle before rolling him up with that tights to win. This victory elevated Helms in a way. He wasn't pigeonholed in one area of the card. He can be a cruiserweight yet a mid-carder at the same time, and back then, once you were a cruiserweight, you were just that. As for the feud between these two, it officially began on the August 25th, 2006 episode of SmackDown. On that night, during a match with Mr. Kennedy, Matt Hardy was in the driver's seat when Gregory Helms from out of nowhere hung him on the ropes. Kennedy took advantage to win the match. As a result of this incident, Hardy and Helms faced off in a set of matches. Matt won the first match clean despite Helms' cheating ways. Before their second match, Helms cost Matt Hardy his match against The Miz, who was probably the weakest wrestler at this point. The second match saw Helms score an unclean victory, a dirty victory against Hardy. He took advantage of the referee and Matt with a low blow, and it was 1-1 now. The third match saw Matt Hardy stoop to Gregory Helms' level by cheating to win. After kicking out of the Shining Wizard, Helms was trying to expose the turnbuckle when Matt low blowed the hell out of him before going for the roll-up to win. So basically, turnabout's fair play. Now, their best match, in my opinion, it had to be that No Mercy one. They told a great story in there, and I suggest you watch it if you haven't. It's not an all-time classic or anything like that, but it's an underrated gem. Helms tried cheating after not getting the clean win, and Matt refused to stoop down to his level. Instead, he hit the twist of fate to win the match. Their feud also brought us one of my favorite Teddy Long moments, which is this one. So backstage, Helms confronted Matt and he claimed that his victory at No Mercy was a fluke. He promised to win the war because he's better than Matt, and he also took a jab at Matt holding a championship before bragging about how he's the best champion out there today and how he can beat anyone. So Teddy Long conveniently hears this. He realizes that he's yet to hook up his good buddy. So he asks Helms. He asks him, like, are you saying this true? Helms is like, of course they are. So then he books Gregory Helms in a match one-on-one with The Undertaker. Helms threw a fit in light of this announcement and he got his ass kicked in a couple of minutes. Helms though quickly bounced back with a W against Matt Hardy the following week. He used the ropes for leverage and Matt was seething. It seems like this feud was never ending, but that is what I'm going to talk about right now. Heading into Survivor Series, both men had their rubber match. This time it was Matt who bested Helms, and at the pay-per-view, Helms' shoulders were down on the mat once again during the Survivor Series elimination match. And just to note, it's a pretty cool thing to see Helms. He teamed up with those 4 other guys. It showed that he was pretty notable. Following Survivor Series, Helms focused on defending the Cruiserweight Championship, and at this point, he was the longest reigning champion in WWE and the longest reigning Cruiserweight champion ever. He had this absolute awesome match against Jimmy Wang Yang at Armageddon, and looking back, if I had to choose a match for Helms to lose, it would be this one. Why? Well, it felt like it was time for him to climb up the card and focus on getting the U.S. title. Jimmy Wang Yang was really fun at this point, and I don't think there was anyone better than him to lead the Cruiserweight division. But it wasn't to be, and at least they left us with a barn burner. I mean, you can't really go wrong with Helms versus Jimmy Wang Yang, and you can't really go wrong with Helms as Cruiserweight champion. Unfortunately, though, I'd say this was Helms' last great or memorable match during this run, because following this, he lost to the likes of Daivari, and most importantly, he lost the Cruiserweight Championship. His reign was ended by Jimmy Wang Yang. The moment Yang got that 3 count, the fans went crazy. And it wasn't he who won the match, it was Chavo Guerrero who ended up winning that gauntlet match. Helms' title reign lasted 385 days, and he really did all he could to make the title worthwhile or notable in the fans' eyes. Following the title loss, Helms slowly began to fall off. His final appearance was a loss against Jimmy Wang Yang on the May 4th, 2007 episode of SmackDown. After that match, he was out with a neck injury, which left him sidelined for a year and a half. By the time he returned, he wasn't really Gregory Helms anymore, and he wasn't a heel. He popped up on the screen occasionally making jokes about heels such as Shelton Benjamin and MVP, as you can see here, and he was calling himself Hurricane Helms. So basically, this is it. This is the end of the Gregory Helms character. I will focus on Hurricane, the Ruthless Aggression era run, and the final run, which is what I'm talking about right now, in a future video, hopefully. Now, why was Gregory Helms so good during this run? Well, he had so many damn entertaining matches. He was basically the guy that wanted to get the win at any and every cost. He was smart, he was devious. He was the unsung hero of SmackDown in 2006. He was reliable as hell for the brand. And yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. I personally believe he would have climbed up the card had he never got injured. Like, the US title scene would have benefited from Gregory Helms in the summer of 2007. So yeah. What did you guys think of Gregory Helms' run? Please comment down below. And that's it for this video. Make sure you hit a swinging neck breaker on the like button, and perhaps a shining wizard on the subscribe button. Peace. I'm out.